I think that'll be easier for me to do this presentation. You may recall I've had several things scheduled since then, but you may recall it wasn't but just a few weeks ago I arrived back from Costa Rica, and so wanted to give a report of some of what we were up to during that time. Obviously 17 days, 19 if you count the travel day going down there and the travel day coming back. 17 days worth obviously can't give you everything that we did. Oh, I could, but you'd probably leave before I got finished. So I'm going to kind of condense this down. There's quite a few things that I wanted to talk to you about, but we'll just kind of give you the highlights of what happened on this trip. Dave did his presentation at West Georgia a few weeks ago, and he referenced the verse in Acts 14:27, where it says, when they were come, talking about Paul and Barnabas, when they were come and had gathered the church together, they rehearsed all that God had done with them. So that's kind of what we're doing this evening, giving you a report of what you did. The church here helped me significantly to take that trip, to be a part of that work. There were individuals, there was also as a congregation, that basically, I'm trying to think, yes, I did not have any outside help. The Bremen Church, no one else participated as far as sending me on this trip, and so I thought that was really neat, because this is my home congregation. Yes, as I always say, I am the preacher, one of the preachers here at the Bremen Church of Christ, but first and foremost, I'm a member here, and I'm a part of the family, and so that's really was really exciting to me to be able to have the opportunity to do that without having any kind of outside help besides just from this congregation. So that being said, here's where I went to. Again, Dave, Nikki, and I went on this trip. Wade Webster was going to go with us. He wasn't going to be able to stay the entire time, so we were going to have set it up where we overlap, but we were having a little bit of difficulty getting translators. We thought we were. It actually turned out we could have been fine, but we didn't know our first translator was going to grow on us and us grow on him, and him end up staying about 3 times the length of time he originally said he was going to stay. But anyway, it was us three Americans went down there, and of course we stayed with Hainer Montialto, who is doing the work down there. He's helping to start that congregation. We stayed, Dave and Nikki were able to stay at a hotel, which was more like a convention type center, but they had rooms where people could stay like a hotel, and so they ended up with a nice place to stay, and I stayed there with Hainer. Of course, up here is Managua and Nicaragua, where Chris and I have been before. I think Todd and Chris have been to Liberia. Last year I flew into Liberia, and that was working closer to that area. Hainer was about, I think, 45 minutes from the Liberia airport last year, but he's since moved. He's now living, as you see the arrow pointing there, to San Jose. And you'll see in just a moment, San Jose is a large area, and there are these districts. I kind of compare it to, you have Atlanta, you have downtown, but you also have Buckhead, you have Cummins, you have, I don't know all the different areas, but you have all these outlying areas that are kind of almost cities within themselves, but they're kind of considered part of Atlanta as well. Same thing with San Jose, a big city and a lot of districts, or however you want to word that. Here's where we flew in here to the international airport. Everybody says it's kind of like Atlanta. Everybody says the Atlanta airport, but as you know, and all of us who live in this area know, it's not actually in Atlanta, is it? It's outside of Atlanta. Well, here is downtown San Jose, but the airport is about 45 minutes or so from there in Alajuela. So we flew in there. We drove down to San Jose. We spent most of our time at Costa de Hainer here, or at least in that general vicinity. That's Coronado area. That's one of those districts. Moravia is where we were going to work. Before I forget this, in Moravia, there is no Church of Christ. There are about 60,000 people, a little less than 60,000 people in that district population. Not a single congregation of the Lord's people. Well, there wasn't. So that was kind of the main purpose. Hainer wanted to move there, and he wanted to start a congregation there. And there are still a few districts, other districts, that have pretty sizable populations, not a single congregation of the Lord's people. So he said his goal would be, he said it'd be great if in a few years this congregation is able to carry on the work, and they have maybe some of the men do the preaching, or maybe they've got a guy who comes in and, as we sometimes use the expression, a tent-making preacher or something like that. And then he said, I'd like to go on to another district and start a congregation there. So, but this is where we spent a good portion of time, is in this general vicinity where Hayner's place is, and then that pointer is temperamental. Desemperados is where Hayner worshiped before starting this congregation. When he moved to the area, he kind of essentially placed membership there as he worked toward getting a congregation going in Moravia. So that's kind of a little bit closer view. Now, travel. I've broken this up into several little headings here, but travel is the first one. There we are on the airplane. Nikki grabbed a quick selfie of us three, crunched in like sardines on the airplane there. Nikki had a lot of these pictures from the airplane. I just took a few of the really pretty ones that were just really picturesque. Very interesting, as you fly into San Jose, you can see this volcano very distinctly from the sky. That's the Arenal volcano. It's an active volcano. It's not like Mount Vesuvius active. It's not that there's some kind of worry that it's going to just blow up Costa Rica, but at the same time it is an active volcano. Costa Rica is filled with volcanoes, and a lot of them are active, but that's one that really, really stands out as you're flying in if you are so privileged as to have a window seat and not getting your elbows knocked by the drink cart. I'm just kidding. This is at the bank where we exchanged our money. Very different, in some ways similar but different. You go and you exchange your money, and we go there, and the door is locked. And so they unlock the door, and these two armed guards you see over here, they will kind of stick their head out and basically say, what do you want? And so Hayner tells them we came here to exchange the money, and if there's too many people in there, they just won't let you in. And when a few people came out, then they said, okay, you can go in, and then you go and you wait your turn, and you go up to one of these little counters here, and you can tell them what you want. What was something else I was going to mention? Oh, this pole, interestingly, there's it's not like California or anything in Costa Rica, but they do sometimes have earthquakes. And so there's, I forget exactly what that pole says, but you can see right there's a sign. And it's basically in Spanish telling you, if there's an earthquake, come to this pole. It's the most stable point of the building. So you know where to go if there's an earthquake. Thankfully, there was not. Here's some Costa Rican money. I don't think to take pictures like this. This is why it's good to have a woman on a trip like that with you, because it's just some things like this that people find interesting that I just, it never even crossed my mind. Nikki not only took a picture, we've done our personality study. Nikki's a very strong melancholy. We figured that out. So Nikki's got it laid out. I mean, they're very organized, front, back. But I'm very thankful for that, because now I can show you, here's what Costa Rican money looks like. You feel rich when you're walking around with 2 mil, 5 mil, 10 mil, 20 mil. In fact, Dave FaceTimed his children one time and said, hey, Elijah, check this out. And Elijah was just, what? Oh, man, y'all have so much money over there. But here's the deal. A meal is 1,000 in Spanish. So 20,000, you say, well, it's still pretty rich. But when you figure 566 colones to $1, 20,000 colones, that's about, it's getting toward $40. It depends. All this, you'll see, I put approximate on everything, because the exchange rate is changing sometimes daily. It was 566 when we got down there. One day I had Hayner check, and the reason you have to check is because a lot of times if you're in a store and you want to pay in American dollars, they say, sure, you can pay in dollars. They're going to exchange it at 500 colones, and that's an easy way to figure, but it also cheats you out of 66 colones or so per, so sometimes you would check, and one day we checked and it was like, I think 562 one day. So that's why all these will say approximately or about. But as you see the difference in money is very colorful for sure. Here one day Hayner had to fill up his gas tank, so he was fairly low. You see it held about 37.5 liters, 23,500 not dollars. That'll blow your mind when you first see that. But again, something like $41.52 to fill up. It's about he's driving a Toyota Corolla, so basically pretty empty there when he filled it up. Not almost 10 gallons, but you see the price per gallon. It's not cheap to get gas down there. Now, all the gasoline stations are full service. You pull up and you tell them, fill it up, or I want 20,000 colones worth, or whatever you want. But it's all full service, so that's part of why the price is more. But it's not cheap, and so a lot of people in a big city like this use the bus system. Here are just a couple things. My temporary home, some of the sites and the workers on our trip. There's Hayner's place, right next door to a restaurant. I thought that was going to be excellent. Right next door to a restaurant. I mean, what more could you ask for, right? Not that great. So that food was okay, and she also took advantage of the gringos and said, hey, you got this meal. All you got's dollars. We had not been to the bank. That was the first night. She says, $20. That's a lot for a single plate, one person, $20. So that was. But anyway, this is Hayner's place, right? What is with this pointer? I don't understand this. Are you kidding? All this time. Thank you, Johnny. I mean, we've had this pointer for like a year and a half, and I'm like, what is wrong with this pointer? And I'm covering, oh, wow. Thank you. That is a game changer. Thanks, Connor. I appreciate that. Here we go. Man, look at that, how great that pointer works now. This is Hayner's place, and there's another pointer apparently. This is Hayner's place, spare bedroom, which Hayner was a very gracious host and gave me his room, so I'm sleeping over here. When I was sleeping, I didn't sleep well the entire trip. And Hayner slept over here in the guest room. The bathroom is in between. There's a little kind of a living room type area over here and a dining room, kind of like a breakfast nook that he just turned into an office space. And then behind this, I'm doing it again, behind this guest bedroom is the kitchen on the other side of that. So, and you can see you pull the cars in there. This gate will slide shut. But that's where I spent the night, and where even Dave and Nikki spent a great deal of time there. This is the view out one of the windows there at Hayner's place every morning. That never got old. I'll just tell you that. Waking up and seeing that. You'll see some of these pictures. San Jose is, especially the downtown area, it's in a valley. If you've ever been to Chattanooga, or if you've seen a topographical type map of Chattanooga, you know what I'm talking about. Chattanooga is the same way, the downtown area. It's down in a valley, and so just about everywhere you go in San Jose, you can look in just almost any direction, and you'll see mountains. And it's just some really amazing views. This one also out his window, a little bit of some clouds on the mountain. You see a lemon tree right there just growing outside, and there's another one over here somewhere. But I sent a couple of people some Marco Polo messages, and I was telling them it's kind of confusing because they say, what is that? Limon. And it's okay, so it's a lemon. But there are a bunch of different kinds of lemon. And then they have this orange colored thing. What is that? It looks like an orange, but they say limon. You find a lime. Hey, what is this? I know limon. What's this? Limon. Limon verde. Green. It's a green lemon. So sometimes it's confusing to try to figure out what something is. There was a rainbow one day outside of the window there at Hayner's place. Again, just about everywhere you look, there are mountains. And I'll move through these quickly because I just took several pictures to show you how so many times just grabbing a quick picture somewhere, it's just mountains, mountains, mountains. I think Nikki took this one on the way to Desemperados one Sunday morning. But, I mean, this was the Big Hill. We always just called this street, I don't even know to this day what the street's called. We just called it the Big Hill Street. Then it became Eduardo Street. That's just sort of how we knew it. But this street has a massive hill, as you can see. It looks like it just drops off, but this hill just goes way down, and people would just park their cars on that street. And I told Hayner, I said, I just wondered, does anybody's parking brake ever give out and just roll down the hill? Because it's going to be trouble if it ever happens. but it's just a massive hill, and door knocking that street was, you get you some exercise in. But again, just mountains every which way you turn. You see in these pictures, there was the big hill again, Hayner's car coming up the street there. Just some really amazing views just from that one street, because when you get to the top of the hill, you're so high up there. These are some pictures from, they come look better on this one screen here. We went up to a high spot. I forget where it was, but you're overlooking, see if I can get to one of the pictures. You're overlooking downtown San Jose. It's kind of over in this area. And you can see how it's, oh, there you go. You couldn't see it too great because it was cloudy that day, but all this is sort of the general downtown area of San Jose. It's down in that valley. There's another where you can see just a little bit, but you can see some of the houses, a more residential section, I guess, than downtown. But very, very pretty that day. We stayed up there till right around the sunset, and even the sun was still setting as we came back down the mountain, and it was just gorgeous. There's a picture out the window from Hayner's place at the night skyline from, that would be in Coronado is where his apartment is. This is the courthouse in Coronado. You'll see at night, very colorful. Looks like there's a party going on there, but it's just the courthouse. Here's this was the group we spent most of our time with. Of course, Dave, Nikki, and I. Hayner, again, we stayed with Hayner. Richard, this is Richard. I refer to him as Ricardo, much to his chagrin. It's very interesting. He introduced himself as Richard, and so, a lot of times you just think, okay, well, so maybe he's just, giving us an English form of that. So I was, oh, Ricardo, and he says, no, Richard. So, but that's Ricardo. No, it's Richard. So I said, okay, Ricardo. And so, that was a mistake to tell me you didn't want to be called Ricardo. So from that moment on, he was Ricardo. And so finally, after a day or two and a tussle or two, he embraced it. And so we kind of began to refer to him as Ricardo after that, or at least I did. And we didn't know him very well. He was actually on the, wow, where'd we go this past summer? San Marcos trip in Nicaragua. He was one of the translators. Richard's English is exceptional. And he ended up going as a translator on that trip. But he's he's a quieter person. You don't get to know him as easily as some other folks. And so I just didn't get to know him that much on that trip. And even on this trip, at first, he was just not super talkative. But then he began to open up. And we really, really got close to Richard. In fact, he was supposed to stay, Dave, what was it, a week? Was it even going to be a week? I think it was about a week. And he said, that's all I can do. I've got to get back home. I got some things I got to take care of back home. Well, it got to the end of a week, and we were having so much fun, and we were getting some Bible studies starting to get rolling. And he says, well, maybe I can stay an extra day or two. And then maybe I can stay a few extra days, and a few extra days. And he ended up leaving, I think, just about 3 days before we did. We were there 17 days. So we just really got close to Richard. There's another picture of us out. That's Andres. Tell you more about him a little bit later on. This is how most of our car rides went. We were crammed in like sardines. Every now and then, Nikki would say, hey, I'll ride back in the back with my husband, and Chad or Richard, you can take the front seat. But usually we were trying to do the gentlemanly thing and give her the front seat. But we crammed into Hayner's car, but it wasn't too bad. Richard's a skinny little guy, so we made it work. Driving in Costa Rica, I won't spend too much time on this, but boy, it's crazy. I can't stand to try to drive in Atlanta, but I think I'd rather drive in Atlanta than Costa Rica. There really are, as Dave put it in his presentation at West Georgia, picture driving in Atlanta, but without the rules. There are no, now, a lot of times in Atlanta people don't obey those rules, but here they're just non-existent. There may be a sign, it's just a suggestion. People will pull up to a stop sign, a stop light that's red, and, okay, I'm going. And you can see here, you got this guy's going through. This guy's just going to, this dude over here, he's just going to insert himself right there. This guy's trying to make his way through here. It's insane how they go. And there are really no lanes other than whatever you make for yourself. They got lines, but you can see this motorcycle driver, he decides he wants to go ahead and make that turn. He's not feeling it, just waiting on everybody, so he's just going to go around you. And Hayner said that the drivers get so frustrated with the motorcyclists Many of them, you're supposed to have a special license to drive the motorcycle. It's not always easy to obtain. A lot of them don't want to fool with it, or they can't pass the test, so they just get out on the road anyways. And you can tell they definitely are not qualified. And sometimes there'll be a wreck, and some of the drivers of the vehicles will say, "Una menos." That means one less, and that's kind of their expression. Sometimes when a motorcyclist wrecks, but you can see why they have a lot of wrecks, because they're just, just look at that. But I will say, and I said this to somebody on our San Marcos trip, the people can drive down there. The ones that know how to drive really know how to drive. Like the bus drivers we get on our Yes 2 trips, they can back a big old charter bus like that into a space that literally, a couple of inches on either side of that bus. It's amazing. But the driving is just crazy. You can see how close this guy is, just right on your fender. It's just never ceases to amaze me. I think Nikki took this picture from the front seat looking back at a really pretty sunset, but also you get an idea there of the crazy drivers. I got behind the wheel once. Hayner talked me into it, and I was, yeah, you can see I'm not thrilled with that. Looking at some of the work we did, of course, 1 Corinthians 3, 6, and 7 talks about I've planted, Apollos watered, but God gave the increase. And the planters, the waterers are nothing but servants of God. God, who gives the increase, is to be glorified. Here's where we spent a lot of our time in Moravia. I went to Google Maps, and I just found I was able to zoom in close enough and actually see Hayner's place, or see La Casona, which is the restaurant, which is right in here. And so that I just put a little marker there. And Moravia Central Park is kind of it's the center of Moravia. All of these districts have a town center, and you can always find the town center by looking for a big, huge Catholic cathedral. Catholicism casts a shadow in more ways than one over that entire culture. So you find the big, in Moravia it's not as big, but the one in Coronado was just a few blocks from Hayner's place, was massive. I wish I had more time. I'd like to show you a whole lot of pictures from that, but there's no way to fit it in. But you can see, driving, it's about 4 kilometers, 13-minute drive or so. That's Google Maps not factoring in Hayner driving, so you can probably shave about half off of that, because he drives crazy, loco. So, in fact, all the Costa Ricans do, I've decided. Here we are out doing some door knocking. I'll tell you a funny story before I forget it. We were out door knocking, I think it was on this day. We split up. Hayner and Dave and Nikki were out knocking some doors. I was with Richard knocking some doors, and I told you when I first came back, it's just like here. In a big city, it's just less response than what you would get out in the country. Unfortunately, it's why a lot of people don't take campaigns to a big city. I get that in part, but I also understand there are 60,000 people in Moravia and not a single congregation of the Lord's people. This is where the gospel needs to be going. So we went, and the first couple days were pretty tough, because people sometimes would talk to you. One lady just slammed a door in Richard's face, basically. But for the most part, people would talk to you, but just, oh, I'm busy, or, whatever excuse. But Richard and I, we'd been knocking doors one day, and we were not having great success, but this one guy was sitting down on the grass, kind of a little grassy knoll there, and he's sitting, and there's a hill. So I take my backpack off, and I sit down, because the way the hill was, you could just kind of sit right down there. And so he's talking to the guy in Spanish and telling him kind of what we're doing. The guy says, and Richard says, well, he says he wants to study. And I said, well, Richard, he looks like he's waiting for someone. Looks like he's, got somewhere to be or whatever. And so Richard asked him. And so Richard turns around and he says no, he wants to study, that the Bible is important. And Bible study is important. And he said his boss is supposed to be coming, but that shouldn't be for a while. And really, the Bible is so important. 3 minutes or 3 hours. I need to study. This is important. I said, all right. So I unzip my backpack, and I reach in and get my Bible. This car pulls up, and the guy says something in Spanish, and he goes. And Richard turned around and he says, that was the boss. 3 minutes or 3 hours, so. But that was kind of how the first couple of days went. It was hard making contacts. But here we are, just some various pictures, knocking doors. One of these, that's Mickey Mouse right there. I'll tell you about Marvin in just a moment. That's his dog, Mickey Mouse. Mickey Mouse did not like Richard too much. Hayner seemed to do better with the dogs than Richard. But a lot of dogs everywhere, just kind of like around here, except no leash laws. But I don't think we encountered any that were really unfriendly. There's one here. This is more just from the door knocking. Oh, that's the atheist bus stop, we called it, down here in the bottom right. We called that the atheist bus stop because this fellow was waiting there one day, and Hayner went to talk to him, and he says, I don't believe in God. I know how everything started. I know how everything came to be. And, and Hayner says, oh, you do? Yes, I do. He was very arrogant and just kind of condescending. Yes, I do. And Hayner says, okay, so well, tell me, teach me. And he says, I don't care. So Hayner left him alone. Well, then we were pulling away, and we were leaving in the car, and Hayner rolled the window down, and he said, there's a bus stop there. He's waiting for the bus. You see the sign for the bus. And so Hayner rolls the window down, and he says, the bus will come. Just keep waiting, and God bless you. And then he took off. And so the guy kind of frowned at him and scowled, and then we come 2 or 3 days later, and there the guy is. Richard was not with us that day, so we said, oh, look, Richard, here's a guy. We should go talk to him. And so we got Richard to go, and then Richard had the privilege of getting chewed out by the guy at the atheist bus stop. So that's kind of how we became to know that. This is from a study that happened kind of on the spot. This lady was willing to study. It turns out she wasn't as interested as much as she just wanted some company. Richard loves cars, and he found this guy with a BMW. What is it called, an M series? I'm not real knowledgeable of cars, obviously, but the M series is kind of a more sporty or something. And well, this guy had that, and he's working on it, and it needs some work done. But Richard's a mechanic. That's his job when he's back home and when he's not translating. But he really, really liked this car and wanted to talk to the guy. And in fact, the rest of that day, I hear him every now and then talking to himself. He's doing math in his head trying to figure out if he can buy this car from this guy. And I guess it never worked out because he didn't end up buying it. But every time we would walk by, that was on the Big Hill Street. That's at the top, right by the atheist bus stop. And every time we would walk by that place, he would just, Richard would go, ooh, that car, ooh. You could tell he wanted that car. One day we met, Hayner met with this fella here, talking about getting a sign. And here's the sign he ended up getting. The Church of Christ meets here is what it says. You can see us transporting the sign home. You can barely see us over the top of that sign. But that was to go in the church building once they got that. And this fellow was interested in studying and maybe coming to worship with the church in Moravia once it gets going. Here we are on the bus. I took this picture. Do you know what this is? You know what this means? You know what that means? Nothing. It means nothing. To them, it means nothing. That doesn't even give you an idea. This 46 people sitting, 33 standing, no. You try doubling that. It was unbelievable. We had too many people that day for some reason. We had somebody riding with Hayner. And so I told Richard, I said, I want to ride the bus. I don't want to ride the bus, but somebody was going to have to. So I said, look, Richard, if you're going to go, I'm going to go with you, and I'm going to get the experience. And I experienced it. And I'm okay with never experiencing that again. There's a lot of close quarters. There's a lot of BO. There are a lot of not very friendly people sometimes, but it was an experience. But I took a picture of that because, you show that to people, what does that mean? And, oh, that means this is the capacity. No, it means nothing because they don't pay any attention to it. To somebody, it means that's the capacity, but it's not. There's the bumper sticker I found. Basically, it says, don't tell God you have a great problem. Tell your problem that you have a great God. That was on a bumper sticker, I think, on Ida Street, and I'll talk about her in just a moment. This is one of our last days. We were in a little souvenir shop, and Dave struck up a conversation with this gentleman in English. The guy speaks pretty good English, and then Hayner came up and began talking to him. Of course, they began talking in Spanish, and Hayner kind of had a little bit of an impromptu Bible study with the fella, and I don't know if he's had any more studies with him since then, but the guy was willing to talk on the spot there, and so he talked to him. This is at Hayner's place. Sometimes we would sit around. You see Andres there with the kind of the maroon reddish shirt on. Oh, it's more red. I was looking at the other screen. It doesn't do the colors as well. The red shirt there is Andres. You see Richard over there. Dave's drinking coffee. That was probably, Nikki probably took the picture. I'm probably sitting in the chair right around here with a cup of coffee in my hand too. We drank a gratuitous amount of coffee on this trip, and there's nothing wrong with that. Another picture from Hayner's place. One day we went to lunch with Marlon Ratana. Marlon is from Costa Rica. He married a Panamanian, so he lives in Panama now close to her folks, and he's doing some great work there. Marlon is a graduate of the Memphis School of Preaching. He went through the 2 years and also did the third, I think it's a year of the World Missions Program. Great brother. And he's from Costa Rica, so his mother was very ill. He came to visit her in the hospital, and so we were able to meet up with them. That's his wife and son. We were able to meet up with them and have lunch one day. Somewhere along the way, I managed to break Hayner's microwave, so we had to buy him another one. It was an old microwave, and I don't think I did anything to it. You know, who knows? It's just my luck, I guess. But I went to start it, and I hit start, and it just went brrr, and that was it. No moss, nothing else. So we got another one and got it installed. We actually got him a better one, so that worked out okay. We were able to do that for Hayner. And of course, when you need something, where do you go? You go to Walmart. Walmart Supercenter. Only there it's Walmart con todo. Walmart with everything. That's what that means. And you got your zapatos section, shoes, everyday low prices. There's a set of sheets for 7,000 colones. So, but you know, it's interesting to me that they had a Walmart there, and it was a Walmart Supercenter, a Walmart con todo. Hayner got worn out. All this door knocking and stuff wears you out. Hayner actually woke up that one morning when this picture was taken, and he wasn't feeling too great, and so he took some medication. He didn't realize it was not non-drowsy medication, and he was feeling especially rough, so he took 2 just to be sure it would work. And so he was really struggling by lunchtime, so he laid his head down and took him a little nap. But Richard, Richard could sleep anywhere. This guy, we're riding in the car. Here's Nikki, and Richard just flops over, and he's falling asleep. You see the shirt, so same day, we get back to Hayner's, he falls asleep at Hayner's. Another car ride, Richard's asleep. This was one Sunday. Worship was too much for him. He just crashed. And here you go again. We would always get tickled at Richard, because if he got still, he was so energetic when he was awake, but if he got still, he was going to sleep. It was just a given. Let me tell you about Marvin. We met up with Marvin, and something happened. I think his his washing machine had a hose come loose or something, and leaked water all throughout his house. And so Dave and Hayner and I both, Dave, Hayner, and I, all three is what I'm trying to say. We got in there and tried to sweep out some of the water, because there was just 2 or 3 inches of water just standing in this guy's house. Some of us were working sweeping water out the front, some sweeping water out the back. This guy was interested in a study. It was kind of a weird situation. He's a caretaker for an elderly gentleman. The elderly gentleman has some very, very odd beliefs, and he basically doesn't want Marvin studying. In fact, we tried to catch Marvin at home, couldn't. Finally, that gentleman came to the door and told Hayner he doesn't want to study. And Hayner said, well, Hayner is a very humble man, but he can be persistent. And he says, well, I want to talk to him. Why can't I talk to him and let him tell me if he doesn't want to study? But never was able to talk to him. Marvin was a very friendly guy. You can see, hopefully, here in the tree, that's a grapefruit. If you like grapefruit, you better take you a lot of sugar down there with you to eat these grapefruits. We cut one open, and you can see there, but boy, sour. Grapefruit here is sour, but it has a little bit of sweetness usually. This was just pure sour. It would set your teeth on edge. Then there's Ida. We met up with Ida one of the second or third days or so. This was a street Ida lives on. There's a soccer stadium over here, this side, a big stadium, and on down the street a little bit, you'll hear me talk about Lorna after a while. That's their place. But we met Ida. Ida's not a Christian yet. She has the 2 little dogs, Chicky and Dave. What's the other one? Mia. The little brown puppy is Mia. Mia is only just a few weeks old. Chicky is like 110 in human years. And so watching those 2 dogs interact is quite hilarious, because Mia wants to play all the time and Chicky wants to kill her for trying to play all the time. And Hayner got a real kick out of messing with the older dog and getting her to just, But Ida is a sweet, sweet lady, and She is studying. She's kind of, I think Nikki used the expression, she's a blank slate. She doesn't have denominational background holding her back, but she also doesn't have really any Bible education at all. And so we did not pressure her to try to get her to obey the gospel because she needs some foundational work. We had 2 or 3 studies with her, a couple of long studies, but she's coming along. And I feel like Ida will be a Christian before too long, but there's some real serious teaching that needs to be done. And she is very, very interested. That's her grandson on the bottom right here, Canaan. He also came a day or two. I think just one study he came, and he was interested. And so we want to keep, Hayner's going to try to keep studying with him as well. But she's learning, and she's very interested. Every time they would leave her, she asked the very first study. When they were leaving, Dave and Nikki conducted that study and said, "Are you not going to give me any homework?" "Okay, yeah, sure, we'll give you some homework." Well, she did it. She looked up verses, and she'd have questions for you. So she's a really sweet lady, and she just insisted that we stay for some coffee, and she made some sandwiches, and very, very good. Then there's Lorna and Annalise. These 2 sisters, they were not sisters in Christ, but they're fleshly sisters. They live maybe, I don't know, 100 yards from each other. Same street, different sides of the street, but down a little bit further. That's Lorna's house. We knocked on her door, and she just invited us right in to study. She was really embarrassed because she didn't want Nikki's picture to show that she still had her Christmas tree up. We told her that's fine because Stephanie Hodges leaves hers up all year. So I'm teasing Stephanie. You probably do, though, don't you? I've never met a Christmas fanatic like Stephanie, except maybe Lorna. But although I will say the next time we came, the Christmas tree was down. We came for the next visit. But she just invited us right in. She had this little dog, and I can't remember the dog's name now either. But anyway, Richard we all liked messing with that dog. That dog was so skittish. He would act so tough, and if you just looked at him, he'd just run off. But this Lorna and Annalise both, they were just 2 of the most friendly people you'll ever meet. We stayed that first day, had a visit. We talked some about the Bible, and she found out I love coffee, and she found out Dave loves coffee. And so she just said, you got to take this coffee. And she gave us that coffee. Is that the coffee that's made in Moravia? It is, right? No, it's not. So every morning we would get up and we're having coffee, or sometimes in the evening, sometimes in the afternoon. We would be getting ready for coffee. Hayner would be getting ready to make it, and he would say, "Do you want the regular coffee," which means what he already had, or do you want, he called it frenzy coffee because our friend gave it to us. So he said, "Do we want regular coffee or frenzy coffee?" And then he started messing with me just to make me angry, I think, and he pulled out this vanilla flavored coffee that's wrong. So we tried our best to stay away from that. He tricked me one time, and I took a big drink of that nastiness. One time we stopped by our house, and it was in the afternoon, and in Costa Rica around 3 or 4 in the afternoon, if it works out where they can, they have, kind of like in England, there's tea time. Well, it's coffee time. And so she says, "Oh, you guys are out knocking doors, and do you have somewhere you're about to go?" "Well, we don't have a study just today. We're out just trying to make some more contacts." "Well, come on in. You got to have coffee." So she put out some snacks and served us coffee, and she even had, I think, hot chocolate, Nikki, for you. Nikki's not a coffee drinker. Do what? Guanava? Oh, yes, the fruit drink. So she had something for Nikki as well, because Nikki's not a coffee drinker. We don't hold that against Nikki, but she said she was tempted to become a coffee drinker because we were enjoying it so much. We enjoyed it enough, certainly, for all of us. There's Miss Lorna messing with me. She was threatening me with a spatula there. Little did she know that's not my first time to be threatened with a spatula. Joyce Dollahite has got the corner on that market, because I have been threatened with a spatula many a time. But that spatula was interesting because it was from Slovenia, somewhere like that, somewhere close to where Reagan and her family spent some time. It wasn't Ukrainian, but it was something close. I think because it had Russian on it. I was teasing her that I was going to take a picture and go home and see if Reagan could translate it and give her a little pop quiz on her Russian. This is a study there at Annalise's house. This study lasted about 4 hours. Long study. I was really hopeful for different results, and I'm still hopeful that eventually, you see that's Annalise in the picture there. We spent a lot more time really with Lorna than Annalise, or at least I've got more of her in the pictures, because sometimes we'd just be out and about and just stop by and say, hey. She had two really pretty daughters. Richard really took a liking to one of the daughters. Hayner really took a liking to another of the daughters. So that's probably why we ended up stopping in at Lorna's more often, now that, I stop and think about that. But she had us, she would just invite us in all the time, and most of the time the girls were out and about doing different things because they're older. But this study was in Annalise's house, and just really friendly people. And you see Lorna there fixing her hair, and just you could tell these were sisters, and they're very close. But this study lasted for a long time, and I think Dave conducted this study, I remember, and this is the part where Lorna was talking about what she teaches the children in her Sunday school class. And she took some, you can see the top left picture, some toilet paper. She wraps it around her hand. She's got a bowl of water. She sticks her hand in the water, kind of moves her hand around, and of course that toilet paper just falls apart. And she removes her hand from the water, and no more toilet paper. And she said the toilet paper is like sin. You go into the water, you come out, sins are removed. And what Dave was making the point to her is, but that's not what you described to us, how you became a Christian. And there was a moment you could see her face changed, and she realized, uh-oh. In fact, she even said, I'm not saved. And for a split second there, she was right there, and then something happened, and she went back, and she said, oh, no, I know I'm saved. So I'm hopeful that with continued study, and she's already told Hayner that when they secure a meeting place, she's going to try to come out there and visit. She wants to come and worship with the church at Moravia. So I'm very optimistic that with some study, she's going to end up obeying the gospel and becoming a Christian. In the meantime, one day we took a road trip to Bagaces. I say road trip because here you go. If you can see, we're over here, San Jose. There's Bagaces. I'm very zoomed out on this map on Google Maps. 3 hours, 4 hours going this way. Now again, that's not accounting for Hayner driving. We went this way, the 4-hour way, and then we came back the other way, 3 hours and a half or so. But you go right by the ocean. Hayner said he wanted us to take us home by the way that goes by the ocean. But you can see that's a lengthy trip. But that's where I went last year, and so I had some contact with people there. This is a lady and her son that obeyed the gospel. They're new Christians, less than a year old in Christ. This is the old church building for the Bagaces church. She and her, I think a sister or might have been her daughter, were sitting right here on this ledge, and they were just sitting one evening right before Bible study. Hayner came and just said, we're about to have Bible study. Well, she was very embarrassed, and he said, no, you come and join us. And she said, oh, I can't tonight, but I'm going to come visit. I'm going to come visit. So he says, okay, please do. So she promises she's going to come visit. Well, she did. And she visited some more, and she studied, and she obeyed the gospel. And she got her son and her daughter, and I think there's 2 or 3 members of her family that are now Christians because she studied and helped to influence them as well. And then we went to visit Brother Allen and his children. His wife is very sick. She's not in the picture because she was kind of doing having some treatment there at home, and I think I told you about them a little bit last year if you remember that report. Very sad situation because she's very sick, but these children are just cute as can be, and Alan is just a good guy, and he really, in fact, a lot of the pictures that we would post on Facebook from our trip, if Hayner posted a picture or something, you'd see Brother Allen comment on the Facebook picture. These are we stopped by to visit the lady last year that had obeyed the gospel, and unfortunately she's not faithful, and so we stopped by. These were my buddies from last year. This was a hard visit for me because just knowing that she's not bringing them up like she needs to be. I don't know if you remember that little fella from last year. That's Benjamin and Carlos. And I just went blank. Andres. This little dude was my shadow last year, and he is something else. You may remember the picture of me tossing little Benjamin up in the air. He's grown a little bit, but he's still not too thrilled about. He's not too sure about that. this is also funny because there's like a wasp nest or something right there. And I'm throwing him up, and his mom she's saying stuff to me in Spanish. I don't know what she's saying. I don't know the Spanish word for bees. So finally she points, and I'm like, oh, okay, sorry, my bad. So maybe that explains the terrified look on his face. He realizes this dumb gringo is about to throw me headfirst into a hive of bees. But yeah, that trip to Bagaces was bittersweet because these kids are special. But what are you going to do? She's not doing right. She's living with a guy out of wedlock. But I had my pixie sticks with them, and I demonstrated to them down here. You see how to properly eat a pixie stick. They were trying to eat it like it was a candy cane or something. I was like, you can't do that. You got to turn it up. And, well, then I would help little Benjamin here. So Andres and Carlos said, okay, do that for us so we can get all the sugary goodness out of that. But they loved those pixie sticks. Carlos, you probably remember from last year, we went and visited him for a little bit, and we were cutting up with Carlos because Hainer had told us a story about how there were some campaign workers that were coming to more to see Carlos's daughter than they were to door knock and help the campaign. And Carlos took them, well, it was the next to last night of the campaign, he took them to his vehicle, and he says, come here. And he takes them over there, and he reaches into his vehicle, and you hear, whoosh. He pulls out this big old machete, and he tells them, he holds it up to him, and he says, I know you're not here for the gospel. You're here for my daughter. And he said, I want you to come back tomorrow, but I want you to come back for the Lord, not for my daughter. And so I asked Hainer, I said, so what happened? And he said, they didn't come back. So I got we were laughing about this in the previous picture because Richard is over there in that picture. I'm laughing because I was telling Carlos how Hainer had told us this story and how funny I thought it was as a dad of a daughter. And Carlos says something, and I don't know what he said, but some things, they're universal language. He kind of gestures and says something and points over toward Richard talking to Melanie. And I said, yeah, I said, bring me the machete. And so I got the machete, and I went over to Richard, and I said, Richard, you need to come back, but you come back for the gospel. And so we were aggravating Richard about that. Richard did not meet a pretty lady that he did not like to talk to. He was not just, it's not like he's just a girl crazy person. He is a very, he can just talk to anybody. He could talk the bark off of a tree. You may remember last year I showed you this spot in my presentation. That was just an empty spot of land. That is the church building now for the Bagaces Church of Christ, Iglesia de Cristo Bagaces. Some of our members actually helped financially to build that. But they built that. They got together, the members, and built that church building. So that was our road trip. We went home, stopped by the ocean. Richard and Hainer could hardly contain their excitement at the ocean. They were real thrilled with it. And we just stopped by there for a second. They didn't really, I guess it's kind of old hat to them. Let me tell you about Eduardo. We went to see Eduardo, had several studies with him. Long story short, this man was a sponge. He just soaked everything up. He'd had some bad experience with some religion before, but he began to realize that what we're teaching is different. It's just the Bible. It's not trying to push this. It's not trying to get money from somebody. Eduardo even told us when he came to a point where he knew what he had to do, he told us, he was very upfront with us, he said, I've been involved in some practices business-wise that are not ethical. They're not right. And if I'm going to become a Christian, I've got to quit that. And I need to think about this. And so he did, and he decided that, he told us that day that my soul is more important than whatever money I might make with those corrupt business practices. So we took him to the Atillo church building, and they loaned us their baptistry. There were a couple of places around there that didn't have a baptistry they were able to keep full, and it takes several hours to fill it up. So we went to Atillo. As you can see, no heater. It's just a spot. It's in the floor. Thankfully, they cover that up so the preacher doesn't get excited, and fall off into the baptistry. But no heater or anything, so it's cold. So Eduardo was baptized, and the brethren there were very, very hospitable. They went back and prepared coffee and some snacks for us. They wanted to fellowship some after the baptism. So that was just a great, great day. That was a Sunday afternoon after worship. And then several of their members came over, and the preacher and his family, and we're outside of the church building there. for that photo. You see Eduardo on the far right, Hayner on the far left, and several others. I don't even know all the names of those people, but they were just so wonderful to us. There was Eduardo, and you see bottom right, Eduardo's first assembly with the Lord's Church. He went to Desemperados. We were going to go there that afternoon, but he said, is it okay if I go to Desemperados? Hey, I'll take the bus. And he said, I want to go worship with the church. And we said, brother, we're going to come and get you. You don't need to take the bus. We're going to come and get you, and we're going to take you there. And so we did, and it was really exciting to see him worship for the first time. Here I am giving him some material. House to House Matt Wallen gave me some material from House to House, Heart to Heart to give to whoever we could give it to. And so there were some tracts, there were some issues of House to House, Heart to Heart in Spanish. And I'm laughing in that top right picture because they're in Spanish, okay? I'm giving them to him, and I'm saying, now this one is, and I'm explaining it, and I'm saying it in my horrible Spanglish, and he's sitting there looking at it, and it's written in Spanish, and he's being polite and going, mm-hmm. And finally, I realized what I'm doing. I said, I'm telling him what it says, and it's in Spanish. And so we all got a big laugh out of that. Sometimes my brain just checks out, kind of like when I cover up the pointer. I'm trying to use the laser pointer. The Monday after, within a week of obeying the gospel, Eduardo told us, I want you to come over to my house. I've got some friends I want you to study with. Jorge, Esteban, and of course, Hayner's there. Another guy came in a little bit later. I'll have him in a different picture. This guy right here, I'm pretty sure he wanted to cut me at first, or me and Dave both. He was not feeling it when we first got there for that study. He also, I think, may be involved in some shady business practice or something. But as the study went on, Eduardo, it was very interesting. First of all, we got there, and Eduardo, we're getting ready to start the study, and Eduardo says something in Spanish, and Hayner kind of smiled, and I said, what did he say? And he tells us, Eduardo said, in the name of Jesus Christ, I declare this the first meeting of the Moravia Church of Christ. That was pretty cool. And so it wasn't really a worship assembly so much as a Bible study, but Eduardo was so thrilled that he had friends there to hear the gospel. And so they were not really that interested at first. But Eduardo, you begin to see his influence, because halfway, three-quarters of the way through his study, he looks at Mr. Scowl here, and he says, you read. And you know what Mr. Scowl did? He took the Bible and he read. And I told Dave and Nikki when we left, I said, Eduardo's got some influence. And he's using that influence for Christ. Now, I don't know. His influence may be to whack him with that cane. I'm not sure. But we were like, and I said, and I laughed, and I said, do you know what my remote control is, Eduardo? And he says, what? And I said, niños, my children. There is the other Esteban. They're both named Esteban. So you have Esteban, Jorge, Esteban. I don't know if it's just something with the name, but you can tell Estebans are not thrilled with gathering to hear the gospel, at least at first. But they did. They warmed up, and we actually had a good study, and Jorge is continuing to study. In fact, one of the last days we came, this gentleman, Johnny, is the dad, and his son is special needs. He has some mental handicap, and Johnny told us he'll never be more than about 5 or 6 years old mentally. But we sat and had a kind of an impromptu study with him one of the last days, and hopefully Johnny's going to continue studying as well. He really was progressing well. We were very hesitant to push him to be baptized so quickly, but I think he's going to continue studying. Here you have February 25th of 2018. This is the first assembly of the Church of Christ in Moravia. This is in Eduardo's home. You see Eduardo's mother right here. This was good. We understood after just a week or so that we needed to kind of work toward getting a building for them, because Eduardo's mother, she has some health problems, some physical health problems, but she's also got some mental health challenges, and she tolerated about 1 week of meeting in her home, and she was not crazy about that. But because of all her problems, she lives with Eduardo. Here we are, this was after we left. This was the Sunday after we left when they were assembled there in Eduardo's house, and you see some of the brethren from Coronado Church that went over there. Not Coronado, I think it's Desemperados. They're the Lord's Supper trays that Bremen helped purchase. and I took down there. I took down some communion supplies for them. This is Jorge. After we left, Hayner's had 2 or 3 studies with him. I don't think it'll be too long before he becomes a Christian, as long as he's willing to repent and put away the stuff that he doesn't need to be doing. The Church of Christ in Desemperados, you see this about 27 minutes from Hayner's place. Just several pictures. There's their mission statement and their vision. To go to all the world and preach the gospel to every creature. That's the mission statement. The vision is to change the spiritual life of men living a new life in Christ. Took me a second there. Here's just some more pictures of that. They change their order of services up every week. One week they may have the Lord's Supper first and then prayers and songs. One week they may start out with songs. Every week that's just how they do it. So interesting thing there. This sign's on one of the Bible classroom doors. I'm not a Christian because I'm strong and have everything under control. I'm a Christian because I'm weak and admit that I need God. I really like that. I said I'm going to take a picture of that and show the folks back home because I like it. There's Hayner all decked out to preach one Sunday, and you see his PowerPoint here. It's what Moses saw from Mount. I just went blank. Nebo? Sorry, Dave. I just completely checked out there. What Moses saw from Mount Nebo. And the first point here is La consecuencias del pecado. Well, if you know Spanish a little bit, you probably know that fish is pescado. So Dave and Nikki, we'd asked for Hayner's notes. He gave them to us. He gave us his notes in Spanish. And so I was trying to make out some of the points, and Dave and I kind of had similar thoughts because you first read that and you think, the consequences of fish? But it's the consequences of sin. Pecado is very close to pescado, but very different. But he preached that Sunday. You see at the top left, they have all their men who are serving that day. If you are helping with the Lord's Supper, with the contribution, if you are a song leader, if you're leading a prayer, if you are the preacher, Bible class teacher, you go to the front and you stand on the little raised pulpit area. So like up here in the stage area. That's what they do. In the early going, some of the men were extremely nervous. They were going to be a song leader. They were going to lead a prayer, and they're super nervous about it. So they just had everybody go up there together. It's not like sometimes people see that and they think, well, is this a special singing group or something? It's not. It's congregational singing, but it's just something that they do. I think it's kind of neat. And so it helps everybody. There's kind of that solidarity. These are your men who are serving in the worship period and the Bible study today. Down here, you can't really see it that well, but the children, when they do the contribution, the children will go up first. And they'll have something kind of off over here, be kind of to the left for us, facing the pulpit. And the children will go up, and they may have a few coins, they may have a few colones, bills or whatever, and they put them in the collection. And then they'll have the men pass around the baskets. And it's really cool to see the kids get so excited about giving to the church and to the Lord. I thought that was a very neat concept as well. Here you see, this is Stephen. He's a preaching school student. He's visiting with Eduardo. Hayner visiting with Eduardo. Again, this was his first Sunday to worship with the Lord's church. Dave ended up teaching Bible class. Hayner was prepared to preach. He didn't prepare anything for Bible class. They didn't tell him they expected him to do Bible class as well. So Dave said he had something, so Hayner translated for him. So that was great. Dave did a great job kind of on the spot there. The preacher school in Coronado, you see, is about 3 minutes from Hayner's house, so he's very close there, and before long he'll be, Lord willing, teaching. Rafael Barantes is the director, and his wife Katia, we would say Kathy in English. He's also a Memphis School of Preaching graduate. This guy's great. I really, really enjoyed spending time with him. Here we are visiting, and that's their classroom. Some really great views from the second floor of that building. The students a lot of times arrive at night. They have to take a bus for night classes because many of them work full-time jobs. So they arrive, they sit for a long time when they wait. So Dave and I got there early, and Hayner one time, and I'm sitting in the warmth of the car. It was cold that night. But Dave got out and he's talking to them, and they had some questions. They always have these questions about the Bible, just so filled with desire to learn. And there's Brother Barante's teaching. One of the last nights we were there, Brother Raphael asked us if we would get up and give some advice to the preacher students, 2 preachers who had gone through preacher training school, and so we did. On Thursday nights, the wives come, I think Tuesday and Thursday. So the wives were there that night, so they he also asked Nikki if she would get up and just give some advice to the preacher's wives, the preacher students' wives. So that was really neat. And again, there's him teaching. One night we got together at Andres' house for some coffee, some churriados, I think is what we called that, the top right here. This is more like a pancake. But you see the coffee sock, that's what Dave and I call it. What's the name of that thing again, Dave? Bolsa. And the stand is called Correador. We just call it the coffee sock. But that is some of the best coffee. It's a drip, but it goes coffee into that little sock-looking thing, and it'll make some really, really good coffee. And of course, there was something there that I guess Brother Andres is glad his wife doesn't speak English, because this was hanging on the wall. And one of these days, she's going to get on Google Translate or something, and he's going to be in trouble. But that was hanging on the wall of their house, and that was so funny. I said, I've got to take a picture of that. But they had all these questions for us. They wanted to know from here, two guys who've been through preacher school, they've been in local work, help us with some Bible questions. And so they had several questions each. Some of them had the same questions, so we were able to narrow it down. We were there something like 3 or 4 hours, and you could see Stephen there taking notes. There's Jael, Christopher's son, and Dave's answering some questions there. Sometimes we had to kind of stop and say, okay, everybody, chill. We got one person at a time here. The one time Hayner was trying to listen to somebody so he could translate to me. Richard was over there talking to somebody else, and Hayner looked at me and I said, what is he saying? Because he had this puzzled look on his face, and he said, I don't know. Too many voices. So they were just so eager, to ask these questions. And as the night went on, the questions continued, and there's Jamie. It looks like Yami to us, but it's pronounced Jamie. That's Andres' wife. And Jenny is Christopher's wife. And of course, Jael is their boy, Jenny and Christopher. But as it went on, eventually we ended up like this. The circle closed in, and there was just, it was really cool. They really, really were excited and eager to learn. And one time, Hayner was getting exhausted, and he said, Richard, you translate some. And Richard said, I can't. I have questions too. So it was just, they were so eager to ask these questions, and we spent a long time there. And before we left, we even got out, I think that was Jamie's selfie stick, and took a picture. I can say I've used a selfie stick now. I guess Nikki technically took that picture. And then, of course, the trip home, always bittersweet. You're excited to come home, but you hate to leave the work behind. But as I said before, with Hayner, you're leaving it in good hands. And then some further developments. They procured a meeting place for the Moravia Church of Christ. Between West Georgia and some of the folks here, we've already raised enough money for a year of rent on this meeting place. And I talked to Hayner. Well, I talked to him. I talked to him via Marco Polo, the little app that you use on your phone, for the first time today. In fact, at about 5 o'clock, I got a polo from Hayner, and he's just recording. He didn't say anything, but he just kind of showing it to me. Panning around the room. Eduardo was there, and some of the brethren from Desemperados, and he's just scrolling around the room, and I can hear him singing. So they were in the middle of their worship assembly. So that's really neat. They met for the first time, and there you see some pictures from the inside. It was a great trip. Closing our thoughts out here tonight, this is the greatest work in the world. And I'm thankful I'm very thankful for the generosity of members here. I'm thankful for the generosity of our eldership. I'm thankful for the concern for souls that is shown in sending me to do work like this. But folks, there is no greater work in the world than being involved in the salvation of souls. And I'm thankful that I get to be supported full-time to do that. There's nothing better we can do. It's something that impacts eternity, to go and to preach and to teach the gospel. And so as we close out, it's once again my privilege to extend heaven's invitation to all of us here tonight. It may be that you're not in the right relationship with the Lord. That's why we close with the invitation song. It's not just the habit. It's not just that's what we've always done. It's because we want to help souls get right with the Lord. If you need to become a Christian, if you need to come back as a wayward child, if there's anything we can do to help you in getting right with the Lord, won't you come as we stand and sing?